The stars above the Veiri Empire glowed cold and bright, but inside the grand palace of crystal and silver, silence pressed heavy against the walls. Queen Saravira sat alone on her throne, her golden crown tilted slightly forward, as though it weighed too much for her tired head. She had ruled for many years, but one truth followed her like a shadow. She had no child. For the Veiri, children were not just family. They were the future, the continuation of bloodlines, the guarantee that the empire would not fall into chaos. And yet, after decades of trying, after countless rituals, medicines, and suitors, Saravira's womb had remained empty. The priests whispered that the gods had turned their faces from her. The generals muttered that a queen without an heir was no queen at all. And the people grew restless. Every night she looked at her reflection in the mirror of obsidian stone. Her face was still regal, her violet eyes still bright, but she felt hollow inside. What is a queen, she thought, if she cannot give her people tomorrow? The High Council gathered often, speaking in low, sharp voices that echoed through the great chamber. On this particular day, Saravira sat at the head of the table, though her heart was not in the discussions. One elder struck his fist on the crystal table. We must act before rivals rise. Without an heir, civil war is only a matter of time. Another leaned forward, his silver skin reflecting the light. There is one possibility, strange, desperate, but perhaps all we have left. Saravira raised her chin. Speak it. The elder hesitated. The humans. The word alone drew gasps and laughter. The Veiri had always considered humans primitive, short-lived, fragile, barely scratching the surface of the galaxy's secrets. They were traders, explorers, sometimes soldiers, but never equals in the eyes of the proud Veiri. You insult the throne, one general spat. To even mention humans in this sacred hall is madness. But the elder continued. Madness, perhaps, but look around you. We have tried every noble house, every ritual, every science. Nothing has worked. The queen's body rejects our seed. But humans, their biology is strange, adaptable. There are records of their kind surviving poisons, adapting to alien worlds within a single generation. Perhaps, with them, Saravira's voice was calm, though her hands tightened around her seat. You would give your queen to a human as though I were a bargaining tool? The elder lowered his gaze. If it saves the Empire, Majesty. The council voted. Prideful voices protested, but desperation carried the day. By the time the sun set, a decision was made. A human would be chosen. And so, Commander Elias Kane arrived. He was not what the court expected. They thought humans were crude, loud, lacking grace. Yet Elias stood tall, his dark eyes sharp with intelligence, his uniform simple, but neat. He bowed, not too low, not arrogantly either, but with, Respect, Your Majesty, he said, his voice steady. I come as requested. Saravira studied him from her throne. This was the one the council chose. A man of flesh and bone so different from her own. His skin was pale where hers shimmered silver, his hair dark where hers flowed like white silk. She wanted to scoff, to dismiss him at once, but there was something in his eyes, a fire, a steadiness, that held her attention. The court whispered around them. Some laughed quietly, some shook their heads. To them, it was a cruel joke, a childless queen and a human? Impossible. That night, after the endless ceremonies and discussions, Saravira found herself walking alone in the moonlit garden. She expected Elias to remain with the guards, but he followed at a respectful distance until she finally turned to face him. You do not have to pretend, she said coldly. You think this is foolish, I can see it in your face. Elias shook his head. No, Majesty, I think it is desperate, but desperate is not always foolish. Her eyes narrowed. You do not fear me? Should I? He asked. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not without trembling, not without lowering their eyes. She almost felt insulted, but instead she felt something else. Curiosity. "Why did you agree to come here?" she asked. He was silent for a long time before answering. "Because I believe every species has a right to survive. Even yours." Saravira turned away, staring at the stars. For so long she had been treated as a failure, as a vessel that had not done her duty. Yet here was a human, a stranger, speaking to her not as a broken queen but as a living being. For the first time in many years she felt the weight in her chest lessen, if only a little. The night deepened. The two walked side by side through the silent gardens. No promises were made. No sudden magic happened. But when Saravira finally returned to her chambers, she could not stop thinking of the human's eyes, how steady they had been, how unafraid. She lay in her bed and whispered to herself, "Perhaps there is still hope." Weeks passed since Commander Elias Kane arrived at the palace. The Veyari court whispered constantly, watching the unusual pair with a mix of curiosity and contempt. Many expected failure. Humans were weak, unpredictable, and their bodies were said to be incompatible with the powerful Veyari queen. Yet Elias did not falter. Saravira observed him carefully. He was not like the Veyari nobles who flattered her for status or feared her for power. He treated her as a person, not as a title. At first, she resisted, wrapping herself in pride and cold dignity. But Elias's patience was quiet, yet persistent. "Your Majesty," he said one morning, "I know they doubt us. They say humans and Veyari cannot connect." Saravira's lips pressed in a thin line. "Connect? You mean in the way my council intends?" Elias shook his head. "Not that. I mean truly understand one another. That is possible even if others think it impossible." She raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "And what proof do you have of that?" "None yet," he said simply. "But proof is not always needed to act with hope." Those words lingered. Saravira could not dismiss them entirely. No one had ever spoken of hope without agenda or politics in her presence. She realized, perhaps reluctantly, that she wanted to see if it was possible. Days turned into weeks. Elias joined her in the palace gardens, walking beside her as she told stories of her youth, the history of the Veyari Empire, and the pressure that weighed on her. He listened, asking questions, learning her ways while gently sharing human customs. "You humans are strange," she said one day, smiling faintly. "You value things I have never considered: family, choice, emotion. You teach by example, not by command." Elias laughed softly. "It's not magic, Your Majesty. We simply live, and hope to leave the world better than we found it." For Saravira, these words were foreign yet comforting. She realized that she had never known someone who did not judge her by her failures or her bloodline. Humans, this human, viewed life as flexible, resilient, and worth nurturing. The palace physicians, meanwhile, continued their experiments, attempting to determine if human biology could somehow overcome the queen's decades of infertility. Many dismissed it as pointless, claiming no human could succeed where centuries of Veyari tradition had failed. Elias, however, insisted on observation, careful discussion, and sometimes simple human remedies. One evening, as Saravira rested, in her chambers she felt a faint warmth in her chest, a flutter that made her pause. She did not speak of it, fearing it was only hope playing tricks on her mind. Elias, however, noticed the subtle change. "You are tense," he said softly, approaching. "Do you wish to talk?" Saravira shook her head, though she did not move, away. "There is nothing to talk about." Elias nodded, not pushing. Instead, he offered her tea from a small human-designed cup, something delicate and warm, not unlike the ones humans used on distant planets. She accepted it, the warmth spreading through her hands, calming her more than the finest Veyari elixirs ever had. "That cup," she said finally, "is simple, yet comforting. Sometimes simple is better, Elias replied. Complicated is often just fear dressed in many words. For the first time, Saravira began to wonder if fear had guided her life more than reason. Perhaps she had been too rigid, too bound by tradition. Perhaps the way forward was not in endless rituals or commands, but in patience, trust, and connection. The human way. Days later, the first sign came. It was subtle at first. A strange sensation during morning routines. A new rhythm in her body that puzzled the best physicians. They ran tests, consulted records, and whispered among themselves but could not explain it. Saravira felt the change in a way science could not measure. It was hope, deep and terrifying, mixed with disbelief. Elias noticed immediately, his expression, calm but intense. "Your Majesty," he said, taking her hand lightly. "You are different. Something is happening." Saravira's eyes widened. "Impossible. Humans cannot." "Perhaps the impossible is simply what we do not understand yet," Elias said. And so they began to prepare, not with pride, but with caution and care. The human diplomat taught her patience and the value of small steps. Saravira, in turn, shared with him the ancient rituals of the Vairi, blending tradition with innovation in a delicate balance. The bond between them deepened, not romance. At least not yet, but mutual respect, trust, and understanding. It was a new kind of connection beyond biology, beyond politics. The queen had found a partner who treated her as a person first, a ruler second. Months passed. The court continued to murmur, some openly hostile, others secretly hopeful. Elias remained at Saravira's side, guiding, observing, protecting. And then one morning, the moment came that no one could have predicted. The news of the queen's pregnancy spread like wildfire through the Vairi Empire. Whispers that had been polite curiosity before now roared into full-blown astonishment. The idea that a human could succeed where countless Vairi males had failed seemed impossible, even absurd. Yet the palace censors and the physician's scans confirmed the truth. Saravira was carrying life. Some in the court celebrated cautiously, afraid to voice joy too loudly. Others were furious. How could a child born of a human be legitimate? Would it even survive? Would it inherit the throne? The debate threatened to split the empire before the child was even born. Saravira felt the weight of every gaze. For decades, she had carried the burden of failure alone. Now the impossible child grew within her, and with it both hope and fear. She walked the palace halls with a new purpose, yet each step felt heavy with the expectations of an empire. Elias walked beside her, ever steady, ever patient. "They doubt what they do not understand," he said one morning. "Let them doubt. We have the truth on our side." Saravira looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting a mix of relief and concern. "The truth, yes. But will it be enough?" Elias smiled faintly. "It has to be. Sometimes that is all we can offer." The palace priests and generals convened, urgently. They debated in loud, heated voices, using every argument in their arsenal. Some declared the child an abomination, a threat to the purity of the royal line. Others claimed the child a divine blessing, a miracle that proved the gods had not forsaken the empire. Rival factions began to plot in secret. Generals who had long wanted the throne saw the hybrid heir as a threat to their ambitions. Assassination. Plans were drawn, alliances formed in shadows. If Saravira fell, the empire might collapse entirely. Saravira, for her part, refused to hide. She would not cower like a frightened ruler. "If they wish to plot against me," she said firmly too, "Elias, let them. I will not run. I will protect this child with every part of me." Elias nodded. "And I will protect you. Humans may be underestimated, but we are clever where others rely on tradition. We adapt. We survive. That is our strength." The queen smiled faintly at his words. There was truth in them she had never fully believed until now. Perhaps humans were not as fragile as the Vairi assumed. Weeks passed and the child grew stronger inside Saravira. Yet her body was not designed to carry a hybrid, and strain began to show. She suffered from fatigue, aches, and occasional faintness. The palace physicians, alarmed, began arguing over treatment methods. Traditional Veyari medicine was failing. Elias stepped forward. "Let me help," he said. "We have techniques among humans that might support her. It is not magic only, careful observation, care, and patience." The Veyari doctors were skeptical. Human medicine against Veyari biology? Preposterous, they scoffed. Elias ignored them. He set up routines, balanced nutrition, gentle exercises, and continuous monitoring. Slowly, Saravira began to regain strength. Her body, which had failed for decades, now responded with cautious optimism. Saravira watched him, awe replacing her doubt. No one else in her life had fought for her in this way. Human stubbornness was strange, but it worked. Perhaps the universe had chosen the right partner after all. Outside the palace, rumors swirled. Spies reported tales of the hybrid pregnancy, some twisted, some true. Factions debated whether to act immediately, fearing the child's birth might shift power forever. Assassins lurked in the shadows, waiting for a chance to strike the queen or the unborn heir. Elias, aware of the danger, arranged careful protection. He relied not on brute force alone, but on ingenuity. Guards were placed in unexpected positions, secret passageways were mapped, and simple human tactics baffled the Veyari soldiers who believed they knew every inch of the palace. Saravira began to understand the value of human thinking. Not the strength of arms, not the weight of title, but the creativity of mind. Humans adapted, planned, and saw possibilities others dismissed. That was why she had survived this long, and perhaps why the child inside her had survived as well. One day, during a ceremonial gathering, Saravira appeared before the court. Her belly had grown enough to be undeniable, yet she carried herself with dignity and authority. The murmurs swelled into a wave of astonishment. Some bowed in awe, others in fear, and a few simply stared, unsure what to believe. A general stepped forward, voice trembling with rage. "This child, this human-born child, it cannot inherit. It is unnatural." Saravira raised her hand, silencing him. "You speak of nature while forgetting its unpredictability. The child grows, it lives, and it is mine. That is enough for now. Those who see threat where there is life have already failed to understand the world." The assembly fell silent. Even those who had plotted against her paused, unsure how to respond to such calm authority. Elias stood beside her, hand lightly brushing her shoulder, his gaze steady. "The impossible," he whispered, "is often just the misunderstood." The palace night was quiet after the ceremony. Saravira and Elias walked in the gardens where the air shimmered faintly with starlight. She rested her hand on her growing belly, feeling the subtle movements of life within. "I never thought this could happen," she murmured. "I had given up hope long ago, and yet here we are, a human and a queen, creating life together." Elias smiled softly. "Hope does not always come from expected places, Your Majesty. Sometimes it comes from those who others have dismissed." Saravira looked at him, realizing the truth of it. The Empire had underestimated humans for centuries. They had dismissed their ingenuity, their courage, their adaptability. And yet, here they were, guiding her through the impossible. She took a deep breath. "The court may still doubt us. Enemies may still plot. But I will protect this child, and I will show the world what humans are truly capable of." Elias nodded. "And I will be with you every step of the way. Together we are stronger than they can imagine." In the quiet of the night, the queen and her human protector stood beneath the stars, united by trust, hope, and the miracle growing inside her. The Veyari Empire might doubt, might fear, and might even try to destroy them, but the future had already begun. The first miracle was alive, and nothing could erase it. The palace was tense. Word of the queen's pregnancy had spread beyond the walls, reaching rival factions within the empire. Some plotted to end the line before it even began. Assassins waited in shadows, generals whispered in secret chambers, and the priests debated fiercely about the morality of a hybrid heir. Yet inside her chambers, Saravira remained focused. She could feel the life growing inside her, the tiny heartbeat, the subtle kicks, and she refused to let fear rule her. "The child must live," she said firmly, her voice echoing with determination. "I will not let anyone take this future from us." Elias Kane was ever at her side. Unlike the Veyari nobles who relied on rigid tradition, he thought differently. He analyzed threats, anticipated attacks, and used human ingenuity to protect the queen. "Do not underestimate them," he warned one evening. "They may not understand the child, but they understand fear. We must stay one step ahead." Saravira nodded. She had begun to see the truth. Humans were clever in ways the Veyari were not. Where the empire relied on power and rank, humans used ideas, improvisation, and subtlety. That was their strength. The first real test came unexpectedly. A faction of generals, convinced that the hybrid child threatened their ambitions, attempted a coup. Palace guards were loyal, but even they hesitated, unsure how to respond. The corridors of the palace became a battlefield of strategy and quick thinking. Elias moved quickly, using simple human tactics that baffled the Veyari soldiers. He created distractions, sealed passages, and led loyalists to guard the queen. Saravira, though weakened by pregnancy, refused to hide. She moved with quiet authority, issuing commands that reminded everyone why she was the ruler. In the throne room, a group of rebels confronted her. "Step aside, queen," one demanded. "This child cannot inherit. We claim the empire." Saravira's gaze was steady. "You claim nothing. This empire is my responsibility, and my child's life is my command. Leave, or face the consequences." Generals hesitated. Her voice carried more weight than their weapons. Elias stepped forward, calmly guiding the rebels into positions where they could be contained without bloodshed. His human mind anticipated their moves, turning the Veyari tactics against them. By the end of the day, the coup had failed. The rebels were captured, and the palace was secure once more. The queen and Elias stood together, breathing heavily, yet victorious. In the weeks that followed, the pregnancy advanced. Saravira's body struggled with the hybrid child. Traditional Veyari medicine could not fully sustain her, and the physicians warned that she might not survive if complications arose. Elias refused to accept defeat. He drew on human knowledge, combining careful observation with practical care. He monitored her health, adjusted her diet, and introduced gentle exercises to strengthen her. The queen, though skeptical at first, soon began to see results. She could feel her body responding, growing stronger alongside the child. One evening, as the twin moons reflected off the palace's crystal walls, Saravira spoke softly. "I never imagined a human could save me in ways my own people could not." Elias shook his head. "It is not about saving, Your Majesty. It is about hope, patience, and persistence. We do what we can, and trust the outcome too." The Veyari Empire simmered with unrest. Word of the hybrid heir had reached every corner of the realm, and not all welcomed it. Factions that had long hungered for power now saw the unborn child as a threat to their ambitions. The whispers became plans, and the plans became open threats. In the palace, Saravira moved with quiet authority. She could feel the child growing stronger each day, and with it her own resolve. "This child represents the future," she told Elias one morning. "And I will not allow fear or greed to destroy that future." Elias nodded, ever steady. "We will face them as humans always have, by thinking, adapting, and standing firm. They may have numbers, but we have ingenuity and determination." The first wave of attack came at dawn. A faction of rebel generals, armed and desperate, breached the outer gates. Palace guards rallied, but the rebels moved with coordination and speed, believing that chaos would give them victory. Elias took command. Divide their focus. Lead half into the eastern hall. Use the secret corridors for the rest. His plan was simple, but it confused the Veyari attackers, who had expected the palace defenses to follow tradition. Saravira, though weary from pregnancy, refused to remain idle. She issued commands from the throne room, directing loyal soldiers, with precision. Her voice, calm yet firm, carried authority that even the rebels could not ignore. The battle was not of brute strength alone. Elias used misdirection, creating false paths and setting traps that slowed the rebels without harm. Human ingenuity turned the familiar palace into a labyrinth the attackers could not master. Inside the palace, the rebels grew frustrated. How is it possible? One demanded. We have the numbers. We have the advantage. Yet every move is countered. Saravira's voice carried from above. You rely on fear and violence. You underestimate strategy and courage. The rebels faltered, unsure of how to respond. Elias, calm and calculating, guided loyal guards through secret passages to surround the intruders. Within hours, the attempted coup had failed, and the rebels were captured or fled into the night. Saravira, leaning against the throne, allowed herself a small smile. It seems human thinking is stronger than they imagined. Elias chuckled, softly. Stronger when combined with your authority, Your Majesty. Together we are unpredictable, and that is a strength they cannot overcome. Even after the failed attack, threats continued. Some factions resorted to diplomacy and deceit, attempting to manipulate the court into turning against the queen and her unborn heir. But Saravira and Elias had anticipated these moves. Meetings with nobles became opportunities for education. Saravira demonstrated her child's health and resilience, showing how the hybrid heir could unite the empire rather than divide it. Elias advised her on human negotiation techniques, simple, honest approaches that appealed to logic and emotion rather than fear. Slowly, opinions shifted. Many nobles began to see the child not as a threat, but as a symbol of hope. The child represented survival, adaptability, and the potential for a stronger empire. As the pregnancy progressed, Saravira faced new physical challenges. Her body, stretched beyond its limits, grew weaker. Traditional medicine failed to ease her pain or sustain her fully. Elias refused to relent. Drawing from human medical knowledge, he devised routines that balanced care with exercise, nutrition with rest. Each step required patience and observation. It was a slow process, but the queen's strength returned incrementally. Humans, Saravira said one night, her hand on her belly, are persistent to the point of stubbornness. It is admirable. Elias smiled. Persistence is survival. You will see the same in the child. The climax came unexpectedly during a ceremonial gathering. The rebels who had fled returned with reinforcements, attempting to challenge the queen before the child's birth. Thousands gathered in the palace courtyard, weapons drawn, ready to claim the throne by force. Saravira did not flee. She stood on the grand balcony, cradling her belly with dignity. Elias remained at her side, calm and prepared. People of the empire, Saravira's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. You see a child. You see a human and a Veyari together. I see hope. I see life. I see the future of this empire. A tense silence followed. The rebels, caught off guard by the queen's courage and presence, hesitated. Elias whispered, Now we act. Use the palace wisely. Move strategically. With precision, loyal guards blocked the attackers' paths, guiding them into positions where they could be contained. The humans' unconventional tactics combined with Saravira's authority created a defense that no enemy had anticipated. Then, the child moved. A tiny kick, barely noticeable yet powerful enough to capture the attention of all who witnessed it. Gasps spread across the courtyard. Priests, soldiers, and nobles alike paused, recognizing the life within the queen as undeniable. Saravira raised her hand, holding the child symbolically before the crowd. This child is not a threat, she said. It is a promise. The impossible is possible. and our empire will endure because of courage, creativity, and hope. The rebels faltered. Their attack lost momentum, their confidence shaken by the undeniable proof of life and the unwavering courage of the queen and her human protector. Within hours, the confrontation ended without bloodshed, the would-be usurpers retreating or surrendering. As the night settled over the palace, Saravira and Elias stood together in the quiet gardens. The stars shimmered above, reflecting their relief and determination. "The child is safe," Saravira whispered, her voice a mixture of exhaustion and pride. "And we have shown the Empire what humans can do, how they think, adapt, and protect life when it matters most." Elias nodded. "This is only the beginning. The child will grow, and so will the understanding of what humans and Veari can achieve together." For the first time in decades, Saravira felt a deep sense of hope. The war for the air had proven the impossible could be done, and it had revealed the strength of human ingenuity. The future of the Empire rested not only in royal blood, but in courage, intelligence, and unity across species. The hybrid child had survived its first great test, and with it, the Veari Empire glimpsed a new future, one where humans were not outsiders but partners in shaping destiny. The Veari Empire was forever changed. The hybrid child had survived the initial threats, and the Queen's courage had united factions that once teetered on the edge of rebellion. In the quiet hours of dawn, the palace reflected a fragile peace, but a peace strengthened by respect, awe, and the undeniable proof of life. Saravira stood on the balcony of her chambers, cradling her newborn. The child's eyes were wide, dark, like human eyes, yet with the shimmer of Veari heritage. Small fingers curled instinctively around her own. A gentle, perfect life, both human and alien, lay in her arms. Elias Kane stood beside her, calm as ever, watching with quiet pride. "It is beautiful," he said simply. Saravira smiled, tears brimming. "It is more than beautiful. It is hope. The future we fought for, and perhaps the future the Empire has been waiting for." The court gathered soon after. Priests, generals, and nobles alike had been summoned to witness the heir. Whispers ran through the hall like fire in dry grass. Many came reluctantly, wary of the hybrid child's legitimacy. Others were curious, uncertain what this union of species would mean for the Empire. When Saravira entered, holding the infant, silence fell. She raised her voice, steady and clear. "This child," she said, "is not a threat. It is a promise. It carries the strength of the Veari and the resilience of humans. It is proof that life adapts, endures, and thrives, even in the face of impossibility." The room remained quiet, absorbing her words. Then, slowly, some bowed in respect. Others whispered approval. Even skeptics could not deny the child's vitality, nor the courage of the queen who had protected it. Elias spoke gently beside her. "The child represents unity, not just of bloodlines, but of understanding, trust, and collaboration. The impossible is possible when we work together." The priests, once vocal critics, approached cautiously. The high priestess studied the child, her eyes wide with astonishment. "It is extraordinary," she said finally. "Perhaps the gods truly have favored the queen." Saravira nodded. "Perhaps. Or perhaps life itself is the miracle. It is not only the gods who create possibilities, but those who act with courage and hope." The generals too found themselves reconsidering. Their ambition had nearly destroyed the empire, yet the child's survival proved that strength alone was not enough. Strategy, intelligence, and adaptability mattered just as much. They had underestimated humans, and learned a lesson they would not soon forget. Outside the palace, news spread quickly. Citizens marveled at the miracle, speaking of the child as a symbol of hope. Across the empire, humans gained newfound respect. Once considered outsiders, they were now acknowledged as partners in survival, ingenuity, and progress. Saravira watched the reaction with quiet satisfaction. The child was more than a royal heir. It was a bridge between worlds, a symbol that the Empire could endure, adapt, and grow stronger when it embraced the unexpected. Elias, ever perceptive, noticed her thoughts. "You see," he said softly, "humans are never truly outsiders. We survive because we adapt, because we care, and because we refuse to give up. This child is living proof of that." Sarah Vera looked down at the infant, feeling its small heartbeat against her hand. "Yes," she whispered, "proof that life can triumph even where hope seems